Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is episode 1.7 on Monday, February the 10th, 2014. And my name is Graham Perro. With me tonight is Tyler Fitch. Normally, Melissa Daphne would be with us as well. She had a thing tonight, so hopefully she will be able to join us later on. So right now it's just me and Tyler. If you've got any questions and you're watching live, feel free to click on the Q&A app on the Google Plus screen somewhere, and we will get to your questions when we get a chance. Starting off tonight with some roster news, and pretty much all of it has to do with the Stealth. There was one trade, not a huge one. Bill Hostrauser was sent from the Stealth to the Toronto Rock for a couple of draft picks, and he made his Rock debut on Friday night. The other one related to that is that the Rock dropped or released Stephen Hoare, which made me as a Rock fan a little nervous because the only other person who hadn't taken any number of face-offs other than Hoare was Patrick Merrill, who was still injured. So we got to the game on Friday night with a bit of a surprise to find out who was going to be the face-off guy. But we will get to that when we talk about the Rock game. The other news, or there's all kinds of other news actually from the Stealth camp, and Tyler, I'll let you talk about that. But first of all, Alex Geich was released. Brett Bucktooth was added to the roster. Jordan McBride was signed to the practice roster, another former Mammoth guy. Kyle Sorensen was activated, but then he had to serve the one-game suspension that he got a few weeks ago. And then Reese Dutch got suspended as well. So lots of stuff in the Stealth camp.
Yeah, playing the role of the Colorado Mammoth with a half dozen roster moves for the week was the Stealth. You lose a few games in a row, and with the smaller teams total, there's more players available to try and tinker, and the Stealth are in full-on tinker mode right now. I think that this week we'll see something happen too with the production that they're getting, but I don't know. Even with everything that changed, the Stealth basically came down to suspensions are the biggest issue they're facing. They had their captain and their assistant captain and offensive leader. So Sorensen's the captain, Reese Dutch is an assistant captain and offensive leader of the team, and they were both out last week, and the team suffered again to their fifth straight loss. But they gave the chance for the new guys to kind of get a little bit of time to gel together. They don't practice enough to really solidify all those things midweek. They really have to play to know what's going on. I was a little surprised seeing Alex Geich dropped to bring Bucktooth back. A big righty like him, he's pretty valuable, but with Tyler Digby already playing the role of the big righty, it was fine. It was, I think, an okay move that they could make. Jordan McBride, he's another righty shooter. I think he even got picked up to the active roster by after they went through the practice on Friday. So they really want, I think, to have him come in and play. So lots of activity there for the Stealth. Sean Lundstrom, he got one game in Philly last weekend, and like I said, the game looked a little fast for him, couldn't get his hands free, and they dropped him back down to the practice roster and brought up Chris Wardell, and he played Saturday night against the Mammoth, and he didn't have much production either. It's hard watching that everybody in the Stealth basically collectively struggle right now. The lefty shooters, I think, had like a point or two across four guys. It was off 3 points, I think, 3 assists. It was an awful night, and the game reflected it. So, yeah, I don't know if they'll be done with the moves this week after everything we saw on Saturday night, but I don't know.
All right, the first game I want to get to of the weekend was Friday night in Toronto. Philadelphia came to town, and I, of course, as a Rock season ticket holder, was at this game. And unfortunately for me, it was actually the only game I saw this weekend, so I won't have too much to say about the other games, but I have a bunch to say about this one. it looked at the beginning kind of similar to the Vancouver game last week, where the Rock kind of started out slow and the Stealth started off scoring a bunch. Philadelphia didn't score as many, but they opened the scoring and they looked very physical, very strong, and the Rock were just kind of not. They weren't playing badly. They just weren't playing great. And then they gradually started to pick it up, similar to the Vancouver game, and then Vancouver just stopped. And Philadelphia just kind of did the same thing. They just started off kind of strong and then stopped. And the Rock offense, just everything was going for them. Whether they were shooting from the outside or from in close or from bad angles or from anywhere, just everything was going in. It was just a good night for the offense. Other than the fact that Josh Sanderson had a total of 2 assists, which seemed awful weird to me. He was there. He was on the floor for probably most of the goals. He just didn't seem to be involved in them. It seemed I don't know. It seemed really odd, considering his play over the last decade plus as being one of the best feeders in the game. Garrett Billings obviously had a great night with a hat trick in each half. 3 or 4 other Rock players had hat tricks. A couple of Philadelphia players had hat tricks. There were all kinds of those. And as I mentioned before, Stephen Hoare was released by the Rock, so they had no face-off guy because Patrick Merrill was still out as well. So they went to Scott Johnson, and I think I looked up the numbers, and he took 3 face-offs last year, and he'd only taken 1 so far this year. So maybe he takes a lot if he plays in the summer leagues. I have no idea. But he did a decent job. He won about 42% of the face-offs that he took, which is higher than Stephen Hoare was doing this year, and not far below Hoare's career percentage, which is about just under 50. I think it's 47, 48. And Patrick Merrill's in the mid-40s as well. So if Scott Johnson can consistently do 42%, I mean we're not talking anywhere near Snyder Brothers type numbers, but in Rock history, that's probably what we're looking at. One interesting note from that game: Damon Edwards seems to be getting this reputation as basically a shit disturber, for lack of a better term, because he's the one that ticked off John Tavares last week, and he also ticked off Brody Merrill in this game, and to the point where Merrill literally dropped his gloves and went after him, and Edwards just walked away, and Merrill got a penalty for it. Edwards is a bit of a mystery to me. I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but I know it was on my list of things to talk about. I don't think I actually got to it. But he's kind of a mystery in that there are some games where he does that. He plays really smart games. He's quick on the transition. So with him and Jesse Gamble, the Rock transition is looking better than it has in years. As long as Edwards plays smart. There's other nights where he doesn't play smart. He just makes these bonehead plays and takes dumb penalties and this kind of thing. And he's got this Jekyll and Hyde thing happening. So as long as we get the smart Damon Edwards, then we're in good shape. If we get the other guy that ends up in the penalty box half the night, that's no good. So yeah. So anyway, that's as much as I had on that game. Did you see it at all?
Yeah, I was able to watch most of it, but I started tuning out because it was blowout, and I couldn't hold my attention actually with the way it went. But I like to watch Philadelphia play, and I couldn't believe, having watched both these teams the weekend before beat the Stealth in similar fashion. I thought they would be pretty evenly matched, and didn't go that way at all.
Game number 2 was Edmonton and Philadelphia, and Melissa said she just made a little comment in her show notes saying that this was a surprisingly boring game, and I guess a lot of defensive games can be boring depending on how they're played. I only saw the first quarter of this, and that was only an hour ago, and Yeah, there wasn't an awful lot of stuff happening. It wasn't one of these defensive games where um, you're on the edge of your seat because you're waiting for the big play to happen and nobody can get by the defense. It just seemed like everybody was there was a lot of passing around the defenders, but nobody was really trying to get inside and make the big play. I don't know if Philadelphia was intimidated by the fact that Edmonton has this amazing defense and has been letting in something like 7.5 goals per game. Um, so they thought, well, if the defense is this good, we can't you do what we normally do, so let's change our game a little, and that obviously didn't work. Did you see this game at all?
Yeah, I watched most of the first half. I think all the first half, and the game wasn't as close as the 8-6 score shows. It was 6-2 at the half, and Edmonton was in complete control. And I feel like they went on cruise control almost too much. But never really lost anything. The third quarter, they only gave up one goal, but they didn't score any themselves. They were just kind of coasting along. So the closest the game got was 6-4 to start the fourth, as Philly was trying to come back, and then Edmonton put a couple more on, and it was 8-4, and a couple late goals by Philly made it 8-6. It was not an 8-6 game as far as who controlled the situation. Philly was never really digging back in. They were just kind of scoring. I liked the Edmonton jerseys. I think they're the ones that they wore opening night when they had what's the UFC guy, St. Pierre,
No,
St. Paul.
George St. Pierre. Yeah.
Yeah, St. Pierre. I think they're those jerseys, but they definitely were not their usual dark jersey, and it was noticeable and looked nice.
Yeah, agreed. I think they look pretty slick. Buffalo-Rochester game almost ended up in the same score as the Edmonton game, but this looked like a totally different game. Well, I guess I'm just going by the score. Like I said, I didn't see much of it, but judging by your description of the Edmonton game, it actually sounds fairly similar now I think about it, in that Rochester was in control. Certainly for the first half. I mean, Buffalo didn't score until 40 minutes into the game, or almost 40. But then they scored 4 in about 3 or 4 minutes and got back to within 1. But that was about as close as they got.
Yeah, it was an interesting kind of mirror image of when Rochester went to Buffalo, and Buffalo came out early and dominated. And then Rochester fiercely started scoring goals to try to get back into it. And then here Buffalo had to come out in the third quarter and start going wild. They're like, we beat these guys before, or something's in their heads like this isn't right. And they put 4 goals on in about 4 minutes and started to make an effort of it, but Rochester settled back down and kind of kept them at bay.
All right, looks like we've got Melissa on the line. Melissa, are you there?
Hi guys, sorry I'm late.
Well, it's good to have you join the call. We have talked about the Philadelphia game, the Edmonton game, and the Buffalo-Rochester game. I don't know if you had any comments on any of those.
I'm sorry. We just talked about which games. Let me pull up the notes. That'll help me. Okay, so we just talked about Philly, Toronto, Edmonton, Philly, Buffalo, Rochester is where we're at?
Yep.
I actually did not watch that game.
Okay. Okay, we can move on to the Calgary-Minnesota game. Another one, like I said, I didn't see, but Minnesota looks like it's breaking out of its scoring slump. I think they averaged something like 7 goals in their first 3 or 4 games. They scored 12 last week and lost. They scored 13 this week and lost. So if they can get their offense going at the same time as their defense, then they might be in some good shape.
I actually did watch this game. It was interesting. I felt like Minnesota was really dominating the first half, and then they came out in the third kind of sluggish, and then in the fourth, Calgary just kind of opened it up a little bit, or maybe it was in the third, and then they had rapid fire towards the end, almost got within reach, and then Calgary just kind of gave the extra goal to really cement the lead in that final wind down. It was a pretty good game though.
Yeah, good close game. Shane Jackson with the natural hat trick in the fourth. That was pretty exciting and quick action. He just somehow just found himself in the spot 3 times in a row, 3 different types of goals, and got it to around 13, 14. Maybe it was close. I could look it up, but it was close. And then Calgary just pulled away, like you said. It was good action, fun to watch.
Well, it was fun in the second quarter, I think it was, or maybe it was as the first quarter went down. Minnesota, or no, it was Calgary's goalie, actually had a goal-to-goal goal, but the time ran out, so it didn't count. He actually made it in the net, and you don't see that too often, so that was really cool. It was kind of disappointing it doesn't go on record.
That's pretty impressive, actually. I'm sure goalies practice that when they're in practice. They take a handful of shots at the other net, but yeah, you don't see it actually happen in a game all that often.
I've been told that if a goalie takes that shot and misses, he has to buy the team a case of beer. So that they usually hold off unless it's no concern or no fear. It's like 10 seconds left on the clock and it's wide open because it's some early shot and it's too much time for them to recover and do something. They'll just hold it. That's pretty sweet that Poland did that.
Yeah, I remember G. Nash did it once. I can't think of another goalie I've seen do it.
Matt King did it in the 2009 playoff game. Well, either at the end of the third or at halftime. They still took a final possession, took a shot, and he got it and ripped it down. And he made a goal in the game.
That's right. I do remember seeing that goal. Okay, so I've seen 3. It was a fun game, although at one point the announcers commented on how many behind the back goals we're seeing, because I think McIntosh had just landed one, and they of course mentioned John Grant Jr., who's known for him. And the more I think about it, the more I do feel like this season we are seeing those. You think the guys are practicing it? Or you think John Grant Jr. just had so much success, the guys are like, wait, I got to start doing this too?
It comes down to practice, but I not a stat that we have, but I feel that, yeah. I remember starting in 05, 06, you'd see John Grant Jr. do it when I started watching games. And then you'd see somebody else sometimes, you'd be like, ooh, that was actually behind the back shot. Now you can almost get one a game. Tyler Digby had one for the Stealth, and it looked great. And he's a rookie, and these guys are coming in more prepared from having seen it, and they don't have the fear or stigma around it. That's an out of control move. That's the angle where your stick's more open. Take it, and be proud of it. And go make it happen.
We have a question that was submitted. Looks like it was a comment on the Google Plus thing from Scott. So hello, Scott. The question is, why do you think Minnesota changed files at halftime? I'm not entirely sure what he means by files.
I think they changed goalies. They changed goalies, I believe.
Not for long. It looks like Tyler Carlson played 57 minutes and Zach Higgins played 2. So maybe he came in at the beginning of the third, and then they swapped him again. But he played 3 minutes. They played 2.5 minutes and allowed 3 goals on 3 shots.
Oh.
That would be why they changed back, I suppose. If that's when he came in, I don't know.
But let's see. Yeah, there was 3 goals by the Roughnecks a minute 15, 2:08, 2.5, and then at 2.5 point, Zach Higgins came out. So I wonder if Carlson was stuck in the locker room for some reason. But if you think about that, I didn't know that aspect of the game. Higgins comes in, gives up 3 goals, the team loses by 2. That
kind of hurts.
Bad luck right there.
Oh yeah, that definitely that would not make you feel good. I do remember the announcers talking briefly about the goalie change, that they didn't know why, but I don't remember them even commenting that it got changed back. And since I was watching on my computer, it's too small a screen to see player numbers and names.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Scott. I didn't ever looked at that fact. I imagine goalies and files might just be a autocorrect thing if he's on a mobile or something.
That's very possible. So Carlson had given up looks like 6 goals in the first half, which is not unreasonable. Maybe it was only on 12 shots or something to that effect. I don't have that information, but or maybe they just wanted to sort of shake things up. I guess that's what Minnesota's been used to for the last couple of years. Is we have 2 goalies and we swap back and forth between them. So the thought of keeping one guy in for the whole game is not something that they did all that often. So maybe they just did that because that's what they're used to doing. Last game, I saw bits of this. I think I saw like the last half of the fourth, and that was about it. Colorado and Vancouver. And yeah, I guess I'll let you guys talk about it because, like I said, I only saw bits of it, but it was a pretty close game. It was certainly right down to the wire.
You want to hit first, Tyler, or you want me?
I'll go ahead and take it. It ended up being quite an exciting game, but the first half for the Stealth was 1 goal by Matt Beers, a defenseman. So I didn't really have trouble staying awake, but it was not that exciting. It was 3-1 score at the half, and so both defenses really stepped up and were shutting out the offenses from any clean looks. The South goal was in transition. Second half, third quarter, the Stealth really came out with more passion, more aggressiveness. They didn't necessarily come out and score offensively, but they had a good 2 to 3 minute stretch where they controlled the action and they were out hustling the Mammoth for loose balls, and the result was a goal after a couple possessions. It wasn't just like one possession score, but everything built up to them getting a goal and being the aggressors where they hadn't been the aggressors for a couple of weeks, really. And that was nice to see. It was a change in the second half. They got a good halftime speech out of Coach Hall, I suspect. It didn't result in the win, but it was a lot more exciting game than I kind of expected it would have been. The final possession was the Mammoth with 10 seconds left to clear the ball, and Drew Westervelt runs behind the cage, gets a little bit of pressure, lobs it to midfield, Stealth pick it off and run it back down. Get a pretty clean looking look on the crease, and Westervelt actually dived in front of Ward and knocked down the shot just because he's like, I gave up this ball, they're not going to go to OT on me. It was pretty impressive to see Westervelt sell out that way. Pretty good for an American kid there in the indoor game. The Stealth offense, I mean, they were missing Reese Dutch from his suspension. Reese is worth a goal, maybe 2 a game, so that was a big factor to have him not in the game and lose by 1. It definitely could have gone the other way. We should have gone the other way, and it was the first time I think the Mammoth had beat the Stealth in 5 years I saw at home for a Stealth home game. Last time they did it was 2009 in San Jose, I believe. And it's been a long time since the Mammoths have got a win on the road against the Stealth. It's also, I don't know if, basically Reese has been played every game since then. So take Reese out of the lineup and you give the Mammoth a chance.
Well, that's definitely an obvious statement. Reese definitely has such an impact on the whole game. I mean, that's just one of those crazy things.
Yep. So, I mean, it ended up being an exciting game. I didn't pick the Stealth to win, so I wasn't surprised when they lost, but I thought they had a chance. That last 10 seconds, like, get the ball, get a shot off. Oh, they lost, but it ended up being more exciting than I thought it would. What do you think, Melissa?
I thought for sure this was going to overtime. When that ball did not go into the goal, I was shocked. I was so positive that after Stealth basically stole the ball, and they did. He had a great shot, and you just knew this game was going to overtime, and it didn't. And so, yeah, the last quarter especially was very exciting. I was very frustrated to see yet again the Mammoth let in, well, not let, but there was 2 shorthanded goals. They really seemed to like to let those go by them instead of scoring on the power play. That is a continuous problem the past few years. They definitely, their shot selection wasn't as good. They looked flat a little too often, but there was definitely some sparks. I actually was kind of impressed with what impact Dean Hill had. I mean, heck, he scored the first goal, so you definitely have to like that. But it seemed like he was really grinding some of the loosies out and things like that. And man, there was a shot I think from Sean Pollock. I think it was his third quarter goal that I still don't know how he got that past Richards. I mean, it was such an odd angle, and it was just that perfect shot, just that, couple inches that wasn't covered, and in it went, and that was, to me, was a highlight goal. I mean, I was still surprised by that, but I think if the Stealth would have been, if like Dutch would have been there, I think the Stealth would have taken this game. I don't think the Mammoth were playing up to the level that they could have. I think both teams were just kind of grinding it out, and it ended up being anyone's game, but I don't think either team was really winning it, per se. But yeah, that last quarter, I knew that was it. We were going to lose it in overtime.
All right, one more topic that I wanted to ask you guys about, and I wrote an article on my blog about it this week, but I wanted to get your take on it as well. After a couple of games last week, the Toronto Buffalo game and then the Rochester Edmonton game, there were some issues in the handshake line. The Toronto one was not really a big deal. Basically, John Tavares went first in the line, as he usually does. And he stopped and he started talking to somebody, and he was unhappy anyway. There were no pushing and shoving, there was no fighting, there was nothing like that. And basically Sean Williams got bored and went around him, and he continued the line, and eventually Tavares joined in as well, and that was the end of it. Obviously the situation in Edmonton was a little worse, where Joel McCready kind of went after Jeremy Thompson, and there was some pushing and shoving, and I thought somebody said something about a ref getting hit or pushed or something. Nothing seemed to come of that, so that may have just been incidental, or just maybe that didn't happen at all. I didn't see it. But I saw a couple of tweets from some people that I do respect and do obviously know the game really well, one of which was Dave Pym, former Roughnecks coach and current Bandits assistant coach, who said that getting rid of basically the handshake line after the game is a dumb idea. And I had to disagree. I think the handshake line is something that's unique to lacrosse in that it happens after every game, playoffs or regular season. You see it in baseball after the end of a playoff series. You see it in hockey at the end of a playoff series, but you don't see it in the regular season in anything other than lacrosse, as far as I know. So I think it's a good thing. I think it certainly helps if you've got people who think that lacrosse is a game for thugs and fighters anyway. You can at least point to that and say, well, maybe there's a lot of fighting and pushing and hitting with sticks and stuff during the game, but then they get together after the game and they shake hands every game. I think it's a good thing. I think trying to write a press release saying, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore, is just not going to shine a good light on the league at all. But I wanted to get your takes. I guess, Melissa, we can start with you.
This is definitely one of those conversations that seems to come up every few years, and especially when you have a kind of a group of games where you do have some tussles either in it, or you have big name players avoiding it, things like that. I feel like hockey players do it too, so you still have some of the same issues. But to me, it's one of those things that's part of the game. I mean, from Pee-wee all the way up to the majors, you see these players do this, and I think it sets a very important example for kids watching it, and I think it is actually a necessary part of the game, because you are combatants, but at the end, you're colleagues, so you kind of do need to have something that kind of signifies that. It shows the end of the game, it shows respect to your opponent, and it would be weird not to have it. And maybe it's because every game I've ever been to, practically, they've had that, from watching my brothers play sports up to watching the professionals. I definitely don't think it should be removed, even if a few players occasionally have temper tantrums. What about you, Tyler?
I think most of the time when the game ends, the players usually more have an issue with the refs, and they want to tell the ref what's going on than versus the other team. That's what I see more frequently. It's more of these are kind of blips, like, oh, there was a tussle at the end of this game, where in the vast majority nothing happens. So I think we leave it as is. It's kind of what I like to call, when people are complaining about stuff, it's the vocal minority. If something's working right, nobody says anything. They just go around and happily use it. And when it doesn't work, you have 5 people screaming it doesn't work, and that's all you hear. You think the whole thing's broken when there's 100 people who are satisfied. So these games where there's an issue are kind of the vocal minority, that it happens less than we really think about it. Realize there's been 40 games this year and 2 issues, so that's 5% of the time. That's not enough to change everything. You could do better just with a reminder to everybody. And McCree's got suspended for his actions, and that's kind of the reminder. Like, keep everything in line. This is a tradition we have, special to us. And don't screw it up.
Okay, let's move on to our predictions for last week. And once again, we had a great week. I can't explain what's going on because I'm 200 percentage points better than I have been in the previous 2 years with these predictions. So something's going on anyway. But all 3 of us were 4-1 last week, and I think for the second straight week, each of us missed a different game. So where did it go? I missed the Vancouver Philly game, and am I off by a week? I'm off by a week. I missed the Buffalo Rochester game. That's what it was. I picked Buffalo to win that one. Tyler picked Philadelphia to beat Toronto, which didn't happen, and Melissa picked Minnesota to beat Calgary, which didn't happen. But all the rest we got right, so good for us. Overall, I'm 21-10. Tyler is 21-10, and Melissa is above 500. So congrats, Melissa. You are now 16-15.
No closer to you guys, though.
No, I guess that's true. Yeah, if you have the same record as us, then you're not really gaining. But still, 4-1 is pretty darn good. So with that, I guess we'll let you go first on your predictions for next week.
All right. The Valentine's Day game between Vancouver and Colorado, I am actually going to go with Vancouver. I expect that they're going to have Sorensen and Dutch back, and I think that's going to make a big difference, not to mention the fact that they did just play, so it's always a chippy game. And, I think it's going to be another 1-goal game, probably going to go to overtime, so it's going to be anybody's, but I think Vancouver's going to come out on top. Edmonton and Minnesota, Edmonton is just doing so well this season. I just don't think Minnesota is quite to their level, so I'm going to pick Edmonton again. And on Rochester, Toronto, I'm going to go with Rochester. I think Toronto's playing a little too inconsistent at the moment, and so I think Rochester might just have that one. Buffalo and Philly was a tough one. These 2 teams have played so much recently, and they just keep splitting the games. But I think we're going to go with the home team and pick Buffalo. And then Vancouver and Calgary, with Vancouver having played the night before, I think in these games they're probably going to focus more on one opponent than the other, and both of these are tough. So it could be that they might relax a little bit against Colorado. At least they might think that until they're on the field and that competition comes out. And focus on Calgary since Colorado's playing them 4 times. But I just have a feeling they're going to try and go hard both games, and they're just not going to quite be able to do it, so they're probably going to wear out, and Calgary's going to take it. So, Graham, you want to give your picks?
Sure. Mine are actually pretty similar to yours. I went with Vancouver in the Vancouver-Colorado game as well. Like you said, with Dutch back and Sorensen back, I think they'll get a big boost from those guys. And yeah, so that's pretty big. Has Sorensen played this year, or has he been out the whole year?
Played the first game against Colorado, and then the second game against Minnesota as well. So he's played 2 games this year.
Okay, and then he got hurt. Well, then he got suspended, and then he got hurt, and something like that. Anyway, so he missed the last game from the suspension, and then he was hurt the previous couple. Okay, so I think getting him back and getting Dutchy back are going to be big for Vancouver. So I'll go with them. Edmonton, Minnesota. Yeah, as I said last week, until Edmonton loses, I'm just going to keep picking them. I suppose somebody could probably beat them, but if anybody's going to, it's not likely going to be Minnesota at this point. Rochester, Toronto, this was a tough one, and maybe this is a homer pick, and maybe it's not. I guess the Rock did score 20 last week, so it's not like I'm picking the Anaheim Storm to take out the Nighthawks or something. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the homer pick there. Philadelphia Buffalo. Yeah, this was a tough game as well. I agree with Melissa on this one. I was going with Buffalo for a while because they looked really confident and they had the winning streak going and everything. Obviously, the winning streak's gone now because they lost to the Nighthawks. But I think they're still pretty confident. Cosmo's playing amazing. Then again, Evan Kirk played pretty well in the second game last weekend. But I'm going to go with the Bandits there, especially in Buffalo. And Vancouver, Calgary. Yeah, I don't know if the back-to-back thing makes a big difference, but I'm gonna go with Calgary in that. They're at home as well, so that's gonna add something. And yeah, Vancouver is tired from the night before. It's not a huge travel from Colorado to Calgary, but it's something that Calgary doesn't have to do, and they're at home. So we'll go with Calgary on that one. And Tyler, how about yours?
All right, we've all said it. Even I said it just a little bit ago that you add Reese to the stealth offense, and you'll get a couple goals. And they've only lost by 1 to Colorado on Saturday night, but I'm picking Colorado to beat the stealth here. They beat them 2 out of 3 times this year, and they'll be at home. And I just can't trust the stealth yet. They'll have the full lineup for the first time, but the stealth lefty forwards had no goals on Saturday night, and either the defense is going to shut them out again, or they'll figure it out and make my pick be a total waste. But as is, I can go with Colorado to win that game. Edmonton and Minnesota. Edmonton's by far, I think, the best team in the league. Even there's only like an OT goal over Rochester, but they're better. They're the best team, so they'll take care of Minnesota. Rochester at Toronto. Toronto's put up a lot of goals, but when it comes down to it, I can't pick Nick Rose over Matt Vince. So I'm going to go with Rochester to win that game on the road. Philadelphia at Buffalo. We had Philadelphia the first game of the season, went into Buffalo and just blew them out. It was totally unexpected, and I think it was an anomaly. That's not it's not how either team has really played since then. So I'm going to go with Buffalo with the way they've played the last month to be able to take care of Philadelphia this time. And Vancouver at Calgary. Last time the Stealth were there a month ago, they were missing Sorensen, lost by a couple, and the Roughnecks pulled away, but I think with Sorensen there, the defense will stay settled, the team won't get rattled, they'll keep Calgary from getting on a run. Reese Dutch, it's a home game for him as he lives in Calgary. He loves to play in that stadium in front of all his local friends. So he'll put up a big game, and I can pick Vancouver to beat Calgary.
All right. So we got a couple of similar picks. I guess we all picked Edmonton. We all picked Buffalo. and the other ones are kind of mixed up. So we'll see if we can pull off another one of these 4-in-1 weeks next weekend. So I guess that's it for episode 1.7. This episode will be up on addictedtolacrosse.com shortly after the end of the episode, and that's where you can find all the previous episodes as well. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email feedback@addictedtolacrosse.com. All three of us are on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are there on the screen. And we have a Twitter handle for the podcast as well, which is Lax Podcast. So feel free to tweet us any feedback or questions or stuff you want us to talk about or anything. And that'll do it for this week, and we will see you next Monday.
Till next time, bye.
See ya.
Good night.